All right. Good evening. Oh. How we doing? We'll give people a minute to get online here. Looks like we got 4 or 5 people in here. Is that what yours says? Nope.
I just got the thing now. You have not gone live on my phone yet, so I don't know how delayed it is for anyone else.
Okay. Hey, Michael. David. Cheeseburger. And now it's too many people to catch up. All right, I figured I'd just do a quick live tonight and just talk about a couple of things about bus conversion safety. I know that I get lots of questions when I go through somebody's bus and find something that's just so ridiculously unsafe, and people, especially people from the foreign countries, they're like, they can't believe the stuff that they see on these buses, which I can't believe the stuff that I see on these buses. So it's not just you, but and a lot of the guys too that have if you watch the channel and you have your CDL and stuff like that, and you see this stuff and you're like, what is the deal with that stuff? I just figured we'd take a minute and talk about it, because it seems like people don't understand what is up with the RV laws and the serious safety issues that you see on some of these buses. Yesterday, those lug nuts, that's crazy. And honestly, those tires, look, I didn't check the date code on them, but I'm guessing that those tires have been on those rims for more than 20 years. So that's probably been on there like that for 20 years. So, we talk about it being a risk and it coming off. It didn't come off. It's probably a small risk, but I certainly would never do that and leave that on there or put that on there like that. But we know that it's not safe, and things like that happen all the time. So one of the things that people, especially, like I said, the people from other countries, and some states require yearly inspections on vehicles. Most states here do not. Okay, if you have a commercial vehicle, a semi truck, and you're a commercial driver or whatever, absolutely you have to have a safety inspection done. The driver has certain requirements that they have to meet, both health-wise. You got to have your DOT physical, and you have to have passed your to get your license. You understand air brakes and lots of other safety things. About pre-trip inspections and all kinds of things that are wrote into our laws here to protect consumers and just the general public on the road from truck drivers. But yet something like this, 70 years old, going down the road, hasn't been looked at by somebody in 40 years. All kinds of stuff, just not mine specifically, okay, but some things that are duct tape, zip tied, stuff like that. That's probably a bad thing. There's some zip ties there, but just wiring. Yeah, most states don't require that, and an RV is not required. Now, some states that do, but a lot of people can register their RVs in another state. So if you live in a state like, I think Pennsylvania requires, hey, there's Lewis. Pennsylvania requires a yearly inspection, I believe. But like if you title your RV or register it out of like Florida, or I think it's Montana is a state where, like, a lot of people do Montana because there's no sales tax on it. So you can buy $1 million motorhome, go to Montana and register it, and you don't pay the sales tax on it, or something like that. I don't know the loopholes, but there are states like that you don't have to live in. You can get your RV registered in that state. So people get away not having it inspected because they say it's it's not registered in the state that requires that. But like the biggest concern is all the things that are exempt on here. Like, you're not, most vehicles, that weigh us, I don't even know if the weight matters, but if they have air brakes, you're supposed to have an air brake endorsement. There may be a weight limit, but I don't think there is. I think it's just, if it has air brakes, you're supposed to have an air brake endorsement. But these things are exempt from that. So like, this is just how our government works here in this country. The RV manufacturers get together and go meet their local politician or whatever and say, hey, if our people that buy RVs have to pass this test to get an air brake endorsement or have to have a special driver's license, not as many people are going to be buying RVs. So, you know, we employ 1,000 people in this town. We want them to keep their jobs. We need you to change the law so that RVs don't have to have this requirement to them. And that's exactly, and then they go to Washington and that guy says, hey, my constituents don't want or want to be able to drive RVs. And then not just the RV manufacturers, because then like AARP or I don't know if they're the ones specifically that did it, but some type of retirement organizations like that get together and go to the politicians and say, hey, our guys are retired. They want to live their life and buy a motorhome and travel the country. And they don't want to have to pass a physical and they don't want to have to get a special test. That, you know, they've lived their whole lives paying taxes and they want to be able to drive these vehicles. So let's make it where these laws don't apply to them. And then that politicians, well, now I've got the RV manufacturers behind me. I've got the retired people. Hey, by the way, we're going to help, you know, support your next reelection campaign. Here's a donation. And then this goes, and that's how this shit gets passed. Because if you look at it from a pure safety standpoint, there is no reason whatsoever that RVs should be exempt from anything. Okay, they're a huge vehicle. If anything, they're driven recreationally or not full time. So maybe the drivers don't have as much experience as other people. And that's probably why it's getting harder and harder to get insurance on them too. Insurance is definitely getting more difficult to find. And I'm sure my videos don't help with things, but there's no reason for me to hide what's happening. I'm trying to teach people how to inspect this stuff themselves, look for these things. How many times have I pulled off those chrome caps on lug nuts and said, you know, hey, this is crazy. This shouldn't be like this. I had some guy just go ballistic on me because I pulled off the lug nuts and had the owner change the studs because they were too short. And this guy went just nuts on the internet and blocking him from the channel because he's like, you know, that would have been fine. You could have left it. That's not how we do it. You know, leaky wheel seals. A lot of my bus owners, you know, they get their buses, they just got them, or we're resurrecting something that's been sitting for a long time. It's definitely been neglected. You know, we always go through and make sure all the brakes are working right, the brakes are adjusted and all that kind of stuff. But it is important to do that and to have the safety equipment and then to upgrade the safety equipment because the safety standards when these were built were non-existent for the most part. Well, for one, all those tiny little side windows on the silver side, those are all escape windows. It'd be a funny video someday to see me try to climb out of one of those emergency escape windows. That would be crazy. I'm not doing it. I'll be stuck. Have to get some Vaseline out. But yeah, the safety equipment is just totally different. It's like I've added seatbelts to my bus. I don't even know when seatbelts were invented in vehicles, but they certainly weren't required by law for a long time. My other bus was in revenue service until 1982, and it didn't even have a driver's seatbelt on it. Which seatbelts came into effect sometime, you know, before it was in 1961, right? Was Benny 61? 60, 61? I forgot what year he was. He was either 60 or 61. But, you know, seatbelts came in after that later on. But for commercial drivers, I don't know, that was like one of the first laws, I think, too. But I couldn't imagine driving the bus down the road, hitting bumps, and, you know, the driver could fall out of the seat or whatever. I think it's important to keep the driver in the seat. So, you know, I add seatbelts. I add spring brakes to the vehicles. The old school braking systems like they have, there's no such thing as a spring brake. And then later on, they came out with the DD3. And then obviously Maxis, as you know, spring brakes came out. We're gonna have a very annoying cicada. Sorry, that just started, right?
The louder one just started.
Yeah, I heard other ones. So, anyways, just real quick, I'm gonna take a few questions tonight, but not a lot. I don't want to take it about anything other than just safety. So for this, let's just keep this about safety stuff. A pre-trip inspection, I definitely probably need to do a video specifically going through what to check, what to do on your pre-trip inspection, and do it just like a school bus driver would do or something like that. You know, there's a lot of things with the air brakes. A pre-trip inspection focuses a lot on air brakes, but there are other things too. But the air brakes is super, super important. You know, your tire pressures, you know, just a general walk around of the vehicle, fluids leaking that... you got to watch it with oil leaks because it's a Detroit, they almost always leak. But matter of fact, I had a friend whose vehicle went into for an inspection in Pennsylvania, and like one of the things that failed the inspection was oil leak, and I'm like, oh man, you're never gonna pass that inspection. It's just they really, you know, cracked windshields. I'm not so worried about those specifically unless it's through the driver's line of sight. Some of them are really hard to get. Yeah, but going through back to the air brakes on your pre-trip inspection, you can look that up online, and there's a lot of things that you need to do. Understand the safety systems, you know, the low air pressure warning light and buzzer. You know, does it hold the air pressure? Does it build within a certain amount of time? I mean, there's all kinds of things. Your slack adjusters, how much movement is the push rod moving? Because you know, I've seen them where they're all the way out of the can. You see a little red piece of tape on there, and that's like all the way out. But a lot of people drive them and have absolutely no idea of this stuff. So you can go out and buy it, no requirement. Everything's exempt. You can drive it anyway. You don't have to understand air brakes. I know a couple of the guys I had here recently coming down the hill, I was telling them, you know, I don't know that they didn't not know how to drive the brakes. I just took it upon myself. We're getting ready to go down a steep hill. I want to make sure that I explain to them that you don't just pump your air brakes, because you got a few pumps at an idle going down a hill and then you're going to be done. So just keep steady pressure on it. There's just certain things that you drive a vehicle differently with air brakes. It's not at all, matter of fact, driving this vehicle, period, is not like driving your car. And that's why I get a lot of repair work, is because people think that you can drive it like a car. And I'm guilty of that too. When I bought my first bus, I had absolutely no idea that bigger vehicles acted differently on the road, or you had to treat them differently in certain circumstances, especially hill climbing and things like that. I'm as guilty as that. But when I did buy my first bus, I spent a lot of time online before I even went and picked it up, reading about air brakes, making sure I could pass the air brake test. I was taking all of the sample air brake tests that were online and stuff like that. And a lot of guys probably have no clue about that and how they work. One thing that could have got me in a lot of trouble, though, is by reading all of that modern stuff, is I had read about how air brakes work and all that fancy safety stuff, like the spring brake. When you lose air pressure, the brakes automatically apply. The first bus that I had didn't have any of that. It had air brakes, so I assumed that it was like a modern air brake. I didn't know there was something different, that this predated all the safety systems that we had. So here I am driving a vehicle thinking if I lose air pressure, my brakes are going to automatically come on, and they would have not done that because it didn't have that kind of air brake on it. I had no idea there was such a thing. So I wanted to get my CDL. I don't have a CDL. I wanted to get my CDL. And if my bus is heavy enough to require a CDL, has air brakes, it meets all the criteria to have a CDL, except it's exempt because it's an RV. I called to see if I could go take the CDL test. I wanted to drive my bus in the CDL test. Not allowed. You cannot drive the vehicle to get your CDL test that I would be driving all the time. Now, how is that not ridiculous? It meets all the requirements, air brakes, certain weight, all that kind of stuff. And they said, you can't do it. No, it has to be a commercial vehicle. It can't be an RV. And I thought, well, that was crazy. So I'd have to go rent somebody's truck or whatever to get a CDL. And that just kind of ticked me off too. So I don't know. I don't want to get off on too many tangents tonight, but I know that a lot of guys ask about, you know, how is that on the road? How is that not getting looked at? Do I personally think that the laws need to be changed? Yes, I do. I think that you should require having all of that stuff. I think even if it's something, an RV air brake test, it maybe could be a little different, because some things on a semi-truck are a little different than that. I don't know what to say other than it's too many people. It's the way our damn government works, okay? I don't want to don't post a bunch of stuff about the government, because that'll be a whole nother thing. But laws are supposed to be there to protect people, the safety laws and stuff like that, and it's just not. It's crazy that it's exempt. I'm a part of it, but I'm trying to do my best to educate people to not do it and to fix problems that I see that are like major problems. Obviously, there's some things that we do sometimes that might be a little bit borderline kind of thing, but I would never definitely cross the line. Something, if that is not safe, you know, is that going to get you back home? Don't leave it like that forever. But that's how a lot of things get left on these buses when I get them. You know, it ends up being a temporary repair that gets left on there for a long time. You know, that one bus that we just worked on that had the tag axle brakes disconnected for 7 years, and nobody knew that they were disconnected. A simple pre-trip inspection one time would have let them know that those brakes were inoperable. But nobody wants to take the time to do that. But you really should. It's something that, I don't know. Am I rambling too much? I don't want to come off like I'm just pissed off and bitching about it, because I'm not. And I'm not mad at any of my customers, because a lot of them just don't know better. I try to help them to learn faster. They're following all the laws technically. It's just everything doesn't apply. I guess that's just it. You know, you have enough money and you get the laws passed, and then nothing applies to you. That's all I can. I can't. I don't know. Let me take some questions, and then I'll chill out a little bit. Are you going to go back to questions?
I'm going back. I
or
was trying to just keep track of what people are
if you're asking a question, do it all in caps. Only ask it one time. We're not going to get to all of them tonight, because especially if it's something other than what we're talking about tonight. I don't want to talk about anything else other than just safety and that kind of stuff.
It's funny, Sage said he's going to add seatbelt to the list.
Yeah.
But the one thing that Sage asked, which I have to because it's funny, he said, "Can you address mailbox safety?" I thought you would enjoy that.
Oh, Sage needs a mailbox hood ornament for his bus. He's hit two. He's driven 2 buses, and he's hit mailboxes with both of them. That's awesome.
Okay, I'm still trying to find the first question. I went all the way back to the beginning. Can you talk about the bud rim lug taper tool?
There's 2 different, as far as I know, there's just 2 different tapers that are available. There's one that's like on almost everything. I've actually never seen the other taper, but they're just beveled differently, and there's a way that you can check it in the rim. Now, in tonight's video that I'm going to post, you'll see I show the rims that I have that I took off that bus. They are Stud Pilot rims. A couple people had commented, "Oh, those are Hub Pilot rims." They're not. They're Stud Pilot rims. They do have the taper, and it is the correct matching taper. And you can see on the lug nut that 100% of the taper is meeting the surface of the rim. So that is correct on there. But yeah, you can accidentally get the wrong taper on there, the wrong kind of bevel, I guess is the word, if you don't know what taper is. So other than that.
What is the max years you say would be safe on tires?
I myself would never go over like 8 years on steer tires ever. And I had somebody just yesterday, a comment calling me a P word because I didn't want to drive that bus that had 30-some-year-old steer tires down a road that was lined with just trees, 60 miles an hour. But I'm not doing it. People are rude. That's a whole nother video probably about rude people. But yeah, like steer tires, I would never go over 8 years. The drive tires, I would go longer, maybe even twice that far, depending on but doing visual inspections on the tires. If you have any kind of side cracking, checking in the tires, then it's time to go. But if you took care of them and they were stored out of the sun, some environments like down in Arizona where it's dry, those places are really hard on rubber. You might not even get 8 years on your steer tires down there. So when I said that was still, look at your tires, how do they look kind of thing. The tires that are on this bus down here, we'll talk about some of the issues on those too, which he just put new steer tires on it to get it here because he didn't want him driving on those tires. So, but tires are a huge thing. And that's why I personally recommend it too, run the TPMS system, tire pressure monitor system. That monitors the real-time pressure of your tires, which whenever I mention that, some old school guy, "Oh, you can just check your tires with a thumper." Well, yeah, you can check your tires with a thumper when you're stopped, but you can't do it when you're 500 miles into a trip going 60 miles an hour and you ran over something 2 miles ago that's making your tire go flat, and then your tire casing rips apart and destroys the back of your bus. That's not going to help you with that. A TPMS would let you know right away. Alarm would go off, a light would go off, you'd see the reading up there. "Hey, I'm losing pressure on that tire. Oh, wow, that tire temperature's going up 20 degrees. So something's wrong with my brake or something, something's wrong with my wheel bearing." I definitely recommend the TPMS system. And when I say that about age too, that's talking about these motorhomes that don't get a lot of miles. They're not on the road every day. If you're driving it tons and tons of miles and things like that, you're probably not going to get that kind of life out of your tire. But if it's taken care of and it's used, that would definitely be my limit. Okay.
What should I specifically check on an MC9 that will get inspected in Texas?
I mean, you might want to see what they probably have a very specific checklist that's available for you. And I would recommend going through that and checking all that stuff yourself. But like your air brakes, well, first of all, wheel seals leaking. That's like a real common thing that I see. If they see oil all over your brakes and down your leaking, that's going to fail, and as rightfully it should. Making sure that there's plenty of shoe left on your brakes, that your slack adjusters are properly adjusted, where your push rods aren't moving an extreme amount of distance every time. You know, checking your air hoses. They're going to check for air leaks probably. I don't know what they do specifically in Texas for that stuff, but I'm sure that they have a published list of all the things that are inspection items that you can go through and check yourself. I did just have a super chat from Fred Rutzel. Thank you, Fred. Appreciate that.
Could having your rig looked at by DOT get insurance easier?
I doubt it, but I would love to see the insurance companies come up with something to make it a discount that you could get by having a certain thing done. Like when you build a motorhome, there's the RVIA or whatever that certification is. But maybe there should be something like that mechanically that somebody could go to and just get where all these things were checked. A DOT guy, well, maybe yeah, I suppose a mechanic could do that. I thought you meant by a DOT cop guy, like pull in at the weigh station and say, hey, inspect this for me. But yeah, no, it would be nice if they offered something like that. It would be a win-win situation for everyone. The insurance company would win knowing that the vehicle is in better condition and things like that are getting taken care of. Maybe we could write our insurance companies and ask them, but then that's going to tick people off, because then somebody's going to get mad because their insurance rates went up because a bunch of people are out there driving seriously unsafe vehicles.
How much steer play should I have? In inches, I have 3.75.
3.75 is probably, if it was DOT, that's I think 2 3/4. I don't remember what it is. I think it's under 3 inches though. You're over what it should be. That's a lot of slop in the wheel. Now, do you have power steering? Do you have air assist? There's some in some of these buses. There's some certain kind of systems. The power steering assist that's in a 4106. That thing's got some slop, and you can kind of go back and forth on it too. But yeah, you would probably want to look at it. And the easiest thing to do on the steering play is just to get a pair of vice grips and get somebody to help you and start grabbing different linkages on there. So if you grab the shaft just as it comes, down from underneath the floor, put the vice grips on it, hold it still, and have somebody turn the wheel. Is there play? Well, that could be a U-joint here or an adjustment up in the top. And then there's a miter box there, and then put the vice grips on the shaft after that, hold it still, and have somebody turn the wheel. Is there a lot of play? And then you go on to the next one. And it could just be a little bit of play here, a little bit of play here, a little bit of play there, and it all adds up to this huge amount at the end. So that's too much. You should look at it. And I personally, when I drove my bus back, I probably had 8 inches of play that first time. I couldn't believe it. But that was the very first thing that I fixed when I got it back home. Was the steering wheel plate was just ridiculous. And Luke at US Coach had all the parts that I needed. He's got all that stuff usually for most buses and stuff. So.
Yeah, super chat.
Oh, hey, didn't even see it. Truck and travel. Go to the local driver's license office, get a CDL test book, give you a good pre-trip start, and other safety checks. Yeah, all that stuff's out there. The pre-trip stuff is there. A semi-truck's gonna be a little bit different than a bus, or an RV is even different than a commercial bus probably. But a lot of the systems are the same. Definitely the air brake stuff, that's all mostly the same, and a lot of the main things that you need to check are all the same.
Why do you use only one wiper when driving in the rain?
Number one, I use Rain-X. I have better visibility. It may not look like it in the video because the camera sometimes focuses on a couple raindrops or something, but I have better visibility without the wipers going. And then when the rain gets to a certain point, then I have to use the wipers. But because they're air wipers, you drive your car and your wipers are going like this, and you're like, it's fine and dandy, you're driving down the road. Well, when you're driving with air wipers, they're doing this. They're at different, one's going, I can't even know if I can do it. One's going fast, one's going slow. You try to dial the gauges into the same thing. They're making all kinds of crazy noise. It's way more distracting to me with a second wiper going. And when I'm driving, what I see I can, from my windshield, which is split down the middle, but from my windshield, I'm seeing the side of the road. I'm seeing the line right here. I'm not looking through her windshield to see that side of the road over there. So that windshield's not doing anything specifically for me as far as my field of vision. So when you see the camera off to one side, it probably looks like that to you, but from what I'm seeing, it's not. My seat sits farther forward, the windshield's half the view. I'm seeing the side, the line on the side, and then everything over here too. So, but they're very annoying. Another super
I don't
chat.
like my side being on.
She can't stand it. It
makes me sick to look at it.
It's ridiculous. And my last bus, I converted to electric wipers, and I still prefer the Rain-X over anything. But when it's snowing out, you have to have it. So they do work. I just don't like to use them. I prefer the Rain-X. I think the Rain-X does a better job. Super chat from Jan Garrett. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
How is the 4106 safety issues coming along?
4104, I assume, is what you're talking about. The bus that's down on the pad right now. I have the one brake chamber off. I got to make some modifications to be able to update it to the modern air brakes, put maxis on it. I got to take that drum off the transmission. You'll see a video tonight when I go over a few things, and we're having some battery issues, a starter issue. I don't want to spoil the video for you, but I did quite a bit on that bus today, and a lot more to come. Okay.
Have you considered making a BGM branded pre-trip checklist so people can print it out?
Probably not. I might do a video or something, or maybe, I don't know. There's probably some kind of legal nightmare that I could get myself into if I did that and somebody followed that but still hadn't. I don't know. It's a litigious world. I don't know. But I will do videos and show you what to do and how to do it. But and then I'll probably put a disclaimer. This is how I do it, not for you, or I don't know. I have a couple videos like that where I say that.
And I don't know if you've already answered most of this, but can you give a good overview of what a pre-trip inspection on a classic bus?
Not right now, but we'll do a video of that. I mean, there's certain things we talked about already, like tire pressures and, fluids leaking and, obviously the air brakes. There's a whole list of things that it's not just, do they work? It's like, do they work right? Are they, all that stuff, safety, the alarm, the buzzer, all that kind of stuff.
What electrical safety updates should be done to any vintage bus?
Oh, as you're looking at my electrical wiring back there, it's all legit. Very few wires run everything on this bus. People comment that my brake lights are kind of dim. In the daylight they are, but at nighttime they're not. It's because the glass is really thick in there, and then they're incandescent bulbs. So I probably need to update them to an LED, which is going to be brighter. But if I want to stick with the original glass, your stuff nowadays is real thin plastic. It's very translucent. It's got reflecting material added into it. They didn't have that in 1947. So that's why my things look like that. I did upgrade my headlights to LED lights. Just dealing with the halogen bulbs in buses, I've never seen a bus with halogen bulbs that are bright. Every other car, the technology of headlights is so far beyond what the sealed beam halogens, or even before the halogen, I forgot what they were called, but that was even worse. But they just look like they're literally rated in candle watt powers. I mean, it looks like you got a couple of candles up front. That's how they're dim and yellow. And now that I have the LEDs, I can see way farther out ahead. I've never had anybody flash their brights at me like I have my brights on, because we do sit up higher. That was kind of a concern. Sometimes I'll see somebody adjust their mirror in a car when I'm parked behind them at a light or something, because my headlights are going right through their back window, hitting their mirror and going right into their eyes. But electrical stuff, as long as the wiring is not bad, I'm not really sure what you're specifically asking about that. I talked a lot about nothing.
You're good at that.
Yes,
Why does Lenny not have a reverse beeper?
Well, let's see. Lenny doesn't have a reverse beeper because in 1947, they thought if you were dumb enough to walk behind a bus that was backing up, you deserved to get run over. Number two, they never even thought about putting lights that come on when you back up in 1947. So there's also no reverse lights on the bus. And he's exempt from that because that's safety equipment stuff that wasn't required when something was built. It's not required to have it upgraded later. So he doesn't even have backup lights or a backup beeper, or there's none of that stuff. So I have my 360-degree view camera. So I have, it's up in the air right now, but I can literally see the bumper of my bus in the camera. That's how good that wide angle is. So I'm not going to run anything over. But yeah, and I think beepers are really annoying. You're backing out of a campground or something. Which hey, I'm doing a lecture about safety, and I'm saying I don't want that safety crap on my bus. But yeah, he never had it. Wasn't required. If you give me enough shit about it, I'll add one to my bus. She doesn't like the beeper.
Did you convert your bus to spring brakes?
Yes. And I'm getting ready to do another one on there too. It just came in.
How safe are the Driveline parking brake drums versus spring brakes in the hub drum?
How safe? Is that the word you say?
Yeah, how safe?
The Driveline brake is actually really good. I think it had to stop. There was a thing that's some type of I don't remember what it was. And at 35 miles an hour, they had to stop the bus in 100 feet or something like that. So they do stop it. The problem is getting them adjusted right, and they wear weird. They catch fire so easily. Well, you saw what happened with Sage when he left it on. You can usually drive through it. It's not like as heavy as a spring brake, as much pressure on there. So you can drive through it and not realize that you're driving through it, and then it's just creating heat, and then the next thing you have a fire. The spring brakes, the Maxis, they were invented for a reason because they're incredible. They don't do everything like the regular brake would do. If you think about it, the air pressure that's holding back that spring is only 60 psi. So the spring is only exerting that 60 pounds of per square inch, whatever it would work out to, of brake pressure on the brakes. So when the spring brake comes on, it's not like if you stepped on your pedal as hard as you could and you sent 120 psi of air pressure to your brakes. That is not the same thing as that spring coming on, but it will stop you. It's just not going to stop you as fast as your regular brake.
Next.
Yeah.
How much stronger is a bus in a wreck compared to an RV?
Oh, incredibly stronger. Even though this is an aluminum body, the ribbing and everything is thicker, and everything nowadays has, like cars have crumple zones and things like that. RVs do not have that. They have basically a frame with a big piece of plastic built on top of it. They are not, it's not even close to the same thing. Yeah, if you had a rollover in an RV, it's going to be a flat top, nothing. You'll see it with the driver's seat sitting there and nothing around it. That's how they are. They're not made for that kind of stuff. They don't have to pass the same safety standards that a commercial bus has to pass. So like crash ratings and things like that, I don't even think RVs have to go through that. Probably friggin' exempt from those kinds of laws. I'm gonna get a nasty letter from an RV company too or something.
I have heard from people that you should snub your brakes when going down a hill. Is that not true?
Well, there's stabbing your brakes is much better than riding your brake the whole time. But I don't want to give you advice because it depends on how steep of a hill, how heavy your vehicle is, what kind of brakes you have. You might have drum brakes, you might have disc brakes, things like that. I don't want to tell you anything other than when you have a limited amount of air pressure in a tank, every time you step on the pedal, air comes out. And if you're going down a hill and then you have no air, so you got to watch that. That's the most critical thing about air brakes that people don't understand. You can pump your brake pedal in your car 1,000,000 times and your brakes apply every time. You just don't have, when you're out of air, you're out of air.
How do you check the brakes during a pre-trip inspection?
We'll do a video on it. There's the basic things that we talked about was how far your slack adjusters move. That's how far the push rods go. That's before the brake drums, the brake shoes grab the drums and stop. You only have a certain amount of distance. That when that air pushes that brake forward, there's a rod in it as it pushes forward. Well, it can only go like 3 inches, and there's DOT requirements for how many inches it can move, like 2 3/4 or 2 5/8. I forgot what it is, but you don't want it that much because then that's the end of it. And then when there's no more, it's not putting any more pressure. The brake shoes are as close to the drum as they're going to get. So you want to make sure when you adjust your brakes, you get them so they're right up against, but not rubbing, but just touching. We've done tons of videos telling you, back it off, go all the way till it stops, so you can't go anymore, and back it off half turn, that kind of stuff. He's, yeah, 2.5 inches. So a lot of buses, you can't even see those slack adjusters. And a lot of bus owners, there ain't no way in hell they're going to climb under their bus to look at that stuff. So they've never checked it. They will drive their bus for 10 years and not even know what a slack adjuster is, how to touch it, how to do it, because it's an RV and you're not required to do it. Yet day one of driving a commercial bus, you have to know how those things work, how to check them, how to do it. You can get a mirror to get in there and look at it. You can a mirror and a flashlight. I have one thing where I took a tape measure and I cut the end of it off, and I glued a magnet to the end of it, and I stuck that on there. And then I can always just look up under there, step on the brake, and you see the come out. And you can use that little tape measure, just the cheap Harbor Freight tape measure, and you could see how far it was moving, and then you would know. Oh, super chat. Oh, I hear the dogs barking again. Andrew, Dylan, hey Scott, Kelly, glad to finally catch you guys live. Cool, I'm glad you're here too. Thank you.
I don't know if you answered this earlier, not when you're talking about steering, but someone wants to know, when is steering lag too much?
Steering lag?
Mm-hmm.
I assume that he's talking about play. There is a specific DO requirement, but it probably, again, doesn't apply to RVs. But you want to, if it's bad, you want it fixed. And steering is something you don't want to screw around with. So if you're driving your bus down the road like this to go straight, that's a problem. People sometimes comment on my videos, oh, your bus is... your steering is bad. It's not. I have like 1.5 inches of play in the steering wheel. For a 1947 giant vehicle, that's great for that kind of steering. But what you don't see is that, I get the crown of the road goes to the right. I'll have, the wind's blowing from the left. So you're constantly making some inputs in the steering. If it is not a windy day, there's nobody around me and it's a straight flat road, I can literally let go of that wheel, go track straight down the road. I've done it actually for a mile before, where I'll just play with it. I'll look at the mile marker, I'll let go of the steering wheel, and there's no cars around me, and just, man, look how far this thing can go straight, and it'll do that. But as soon as one truck goes flying by you, the wind of the truck blows you off the side of the road.
What is the best technique for hill climbing?
Keep it at a high RPM. And if you can't keep it at a high RPM, then you go down to the next gear to keep it at a high RPM. If you can't keep it at that RPM, then you go down to the next gear. While the whole time watching your temperature gauge. And if your temperature gauge does not allow you to do that, well, then you got to go down to the next lower gear and do that. So you got to go slower and slower and slower. But definitely always watch your gauges. Super, super important.
Do you ever run a recap tire on your drives?
No, I haven't.
I wouldn't want recaps on any of them.
Most recaps are probably going to be fine. But if you have a problem, that $150 that you saved on buying that tire to begin with is not worth it, because it's going to tear the shit out of your bus, and you're going to have looking for vintage parts that are almost irreplaceable or very hard to find, pain in the butt to change, not to mention somebody might get hurt or something too. For me, a recap is not something that I want to have. I would rather drive a brand new Chinese tire than any kind of Michelin or whatever name brand recap tire. I would not.
Sorry, I'm looking for the next.
That's okay. Please make sure you're behaving in here. If you're being rude, you're going to get blocked from the channel, and we don't have time to pay attention to who's doing what. So.
Someone says a safety video in the bunny suit would be friggin' amazing.
Oh, yeah. Couple $100 in the super chat and maybe you'll see that video.
It's awful hot out here to be doing that.
That was a joke.
It's too hot for you to wear a bunny suit now.
That was a joke. No, I did not mean that.
I'm trying to look for more safety questions. Was the drum broken or the backing plate broken and missing?
Oh, on that, the drum is broke. There's chunks of the drum missing. And actually, I went back and watched the video when I worked on that bus last time, and I knew that I saw that last time that drum was broken, and I forgot all about it. I would have recommended to him to take that drum off before he drove it here, because I forgot all about that. I knew the flywheel was a little bit loose. I'm like, it's probably going to make it. More likely than not, it's going to make it. But I didn't remember that he had that vibration in the driveline like that. I work on so many vehicles. It's hard to remember every single one, that kind of stuff. So, but it's here now, and it made it, and we're getting it taken care of.
Did or do these buses ever have split rims, and how do you deal with them?
Oh yeah, and I have a video of changing the split rim tire and stuff. So it's not something that I enjoy. I myself don't mess with them. I was with Phil one day, and Phil was the one doing it. I was the one standing back really, really far. I helped him as far as moving stuff around and doing it and putting the ring in place. But when it came time to inflate it, I was far, far away. I don't like them, but there's different kinds of split rims. There's the really, really dangerous kind, and then there's just the bead rim with the one ring in it. It's not nearly as dangerous as the Widowmaker kind. But I don't want to touch them. I don't want to deal with them. When somebody has them on a bus, I just tell them, because if they break down on the highway, a lot of tire shops aren't going to mess with them either. So just get the right kind of rim right now while you got it, get it on there, be safer, and be done with it.
Do you have a super chat?
Oh, sorry. Enjoy your videos. Keep it up, from R. Dean Hahn. Thank you. Gunshot.
Do you have a source for longer wheel studs for Alcoa wheels on a GM bus?
Luke at US Coach. I went through the Euclid catalog one time and ordered what the longest one that they have listed in the catalog was, and it was like 3/8 of an inch shorter than the one that Luke gets. So they're expensive. They're not cheap. And Luke is great for the bus industry to have him out there as a partner. Call him and buy him. Don't try to, he's got something that I can't find in any catalog kind of thing, and he definitely deserves the business. So I only did that one time because I was in a hurry for something, and they had the catalog. Oh, I'll just order it. He said, we'll have it in tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, great. And it wasn't. So.
Okay, trying to find the next one, but somebody asked, what is the worst bus model to work on? When you see it coming, you turn it away.
I don't think there's anything.
You've never...
I've never done that, no. There's not a specific model. There's certain things about certain models that I like better, like this configuration on a GM where the engine goes sideways is a lot easier for a lot of things, and some buses it's not. Like you just saw that Bluebird, even pulling the valve cover on that thing was a pain in the butt. So and the Scenic Cruiser, the valve cover on the one side where under the battery box, there's like no clearance. People want to put, I just had an email yesterday. Somebody wanted me to put Jake brakes on a Scenic Cruiser. It's not just put Jake brakes on a Scenic Cruiser because that battery box is in the way. You can't put a taller valve cover on there without making some modifications to it. So there's a lot of things. One vehicle has a plus, other things have a minus kind of thing. That scared me. I don't know where I was at.
I don't know if you can answer this. Is a DD3 like a spring brake when you run out of air?
Yes and no. It has a separate, you apply it like that and it'll lock into place, but it's not a spring that does it. It still requires air to do it. It's just air that comes from a different tank. So it doesn't automatically apply like that. And the way that the cam locks, if you saw that, watch that rebuild video that I did of the DD3, that'll help you understand a little bit how it works. But once it's out, it's there and it's locked, and it works really, really well. But there can be problems with it, and it's serviceable, unlike a lot of the modern spring brakes aren't. But why would you want to service a modern spring brake when you can buy a new one for $50? The mechanic, you're paying him an hourly rate. It's going to be way over that just to screw with them. That's why it's so easy to just replace them. But then it's kind of dangerous what you do with the old chambers too. So don't just throw them in for the garbage man to get killed kind of thing.
Someone's saying, how about auto slack adjuster? I don't know.
I personally, I don't care for them as much, because if it goes on there, it just means it's going to get ignored more. You're not going to pay as much attention to it. These kinds of things that you're constantly getting under there and adjusting, that's what I like, because you're looking at other things while you're under there doing it. Just knowing that your brakes are adjusted automatically for you, which those things do still fail. And people have no clue when they failed because they're driving around with 3 brakes. They're not 100% foolproof, which these aren't either, but these require constant maintenance. you got to get under there and look at things. It's great to look at other things while you're doing it. That's why just pulling your bus up on some boards, I highly recommend it. And even if you don't have to have a pit, I myself don't actually love pits, but it would be nice if somebody who, you know, especially if you're older and you don't get around so well, if you had a pit that you can get into easily and check things out, that's the way to go.
Is it safe to operate with an air dryer compressor that cuts out every 15 to 30 seconds?
Air dryer compressor that cuts out. No, I would say no. I'm not sure what you're specifically saying, but like we have an air dryer, it's right there. And the air compressor should be cycling on and off when it needs air for the system. So if it's turning back on and off every 15 seconds, then you must have an air leak somewhere that it's making up for. Or if your air dryer is continually purging air, if that's what you're saying, that's not supposed to do that. It's only supposed to do that when the unloader goes off. So yeah, I would look into it because it sounds like you're losing more air than what you should be.
I'm trying to find. Most are just comments, so do you advise a CDL to drive a bus or RV?
Hey, it would be incredible if you had a CDL and you were driving, because that just means that you have more knowledge, and I guarantee you would learn something in that process. So something from that process would make you a better driver, a more educated driver, more safety conscious, just not as ignorant, for lack of a better word. So it would definitely be a win-win situation. However, it would really start to piss you off every time you saw somebody driving a vintage bus that's completely not compliant with anything that you know to be legal, but knowing that it's exempt, it would just tick you off. And I see why guys on here say things all the time, because you know they understand what's going on when they see, you know, when they see those lug nuts come off yesterday. They're like, what? That vehicle would have not been on the road for more than a day if that happened on a commercial vehicle, because it would have got noticed. And yet here it was probably 20 years or something like that those lug nuts were on there like that. And we know how unsafe that is. And granted, it wasn't driven a lot of miles kind of thing, but that's a serious safety thing. You see me bitch about it all the time.
Are there any buses that have hydraulic braking?
Some school buses and stuff do. I worked on I don't know if it was a Carpenter or something that had hydraulics. So, but I don't normally do that kind of stuff. But no over-the-road buses that I'm aware of, everything is air brake.
Would having a fire system in the engine compartment improve safety on a Detroit-powered bus?
Man, if you think about an engine fire in your car, you have gasoline and that stuff, very combustible and things like that. Diesel fuel is not. Like I could have a massive fuel leak back here and this thing's not going to catch on fire. So if I had a fire back here, it'd be an electrical fire, or like if somebody left that drum on or something like that. So it's not really necessary. I've looked at it when I go to BusCon every year. I meet with I always go to the booth for the guys that have the fire stuff, the fire suppression systems. I think they're really neat. They have a couple different kinds. One of them is just a plastic tube that wraps all around in there. And when the plastic tube melts through, it's pressurized the whole time, and then it sprays out of the hole they got burned through on the plastic tube. That's the simplest kind. It would be cool, neat to have, but I have fire extinguishers. I can get back here if something caught on fire. It would suck, but it'd be neat to have.
That super chat that's still on there, is that one that you saw or not?
Yes, I believe so.
I just wanted to make sure you didn't miss somebody.
All right, go ahead. Yeah.
What faults found during pre-purchase inspection would keep you from driving it home?
That's a good question. Practice what I preach. Like leaky wheel seals, you always see me fixing that, making sure that the brakes are operational. I don't really screw around with wheel seals, brakes. I do a lot of that stuff. That's super important to me. You know, if there was too much play in the steering wheel, I'd probably be like, okay, that's close enough, or at least give it a shot to try to fix it kind of thing. But if it was like an exorbitant amount, then no, I wouldn't do that. Mostly just the standard safety stuff. You know, if something, if a wheel was going to fall off, it's missing You know, if it's missing one lug nut or something, that's not really a big deal. Even DOT 9 is okay. But you know, if 4 of them were missing, like that one bus that I worked on, the lug nut was literally JB welded on just as a fake thing. That was probably more dangerous to do that because it could just fly off at any time and hit somebody in the head. I forgot which bus that was. That was out in Oregon. Good.
How do we send stuff to Bus Grace Monkey? Do you have a wish list somewhere?
I do. I'll have to figure out how to get that published.
It's on Amazon.
Yeah, if you're on our page, if you join our Patreon, all that information is on Patreon. And
you could probably put it in the description of this.
yeah, I can put a link to it too. But I'd highly recommend you join Patreon. We talk a lot behind the scenes. Almost every day we're making posts on the Patreon page too. And we have other conversations and things. And our Patreon members are really like family members to us. It's super open. Kelly does her lives on there with me and stuff too. So I don't want to make this a big Patreon commercial, but you might want to think about it. But yeah, I can post something on here too for that. Brandon Young, hey Scott, I would like to mail you some tools. I'd like to donate. I'll text you this evening. Give me a text, your address. Okay, yes, Brandon, thank you. I'll do that.
I see some that are in all caps here. I believe it was on the Scenic Cruiser that the shocks were worn out, but I didn't see you change them in the video. Did you change the front shocks?
Did not, but he has the new ones. We had to order them, and they weren't going to get here in time, and then we needed to research what shocks specifically to get. Turns out there's only one replacement shock even available for that. It's the original one was discontinued, and Coney makes another one that'll work in that situation, but it's not exactly the same. But he sent me pictures of them yesterday. He has the new shocks there, so that's getting done before it goes back on the road. And somebody had asked in the video too about his oil consumption. So he was down, he said he used 2 quarts of oil in the 800 miles that he went home. And he was over a gallon of oil in that same 800 miles on the way here. So he's well within spec for the Detroit diesel now too for oil consumption. But there was no oil that was leaking that he could see. He did have some oil that was coming out of his airbox drains, but not a lot. And overall that bus is in much better shape, and he's so happy to not have the oil leaks under it.
Could you explain a bit more about why a Scenic Cruiser floor is part of the structure of the bus?
One more time about the Scenic Cruiser floor.
The floor being a part of the structure.
Oh, it's just those raised aisles because the bays are raised on the inside. Those bays are so tall because what's behind that bay is where the seats are sitting right on top of. So people want to lower that down, but that's part of the structure, the side structure. That thing's an airplane fuselage. It's a monocoque construction. So if you remove the backbone of it in there, that's holding everything stiff in there, and you got to replace it with something else. Some guys have in the past have just cut those out and thought they'd be okay, and it's not okay.
Is air brake regulation pressure 120 or is it lower for classic buses?
This used to run at 110, so I don't know what years things got more or less or whatever, but I run it at 120 and everything holds air just fine. You know, there's some leeway in there with it, but for me thinking I'd rather have 10 extra pounds in the tank than not. So I have my governor set adjusted to take it up to 120.
Where and when is BusCon? I don't remember what.
It's the first of the year. This year they're moving it. Like last year it was in Indy. It's always been in Indy. That's why I go to it. But now I think this upcoming year it's going to be in Pennsylvania, I think is what I saw or something. So this might be the first year I don't go to it. But yeah, if you just go to, they have a website, buscon.com, I think is what it is. But
how long should the air brake system hold air after the engine has been turned off?
Well, you're allowed to leak so many PSI per minute. So whatever that works out to, you can get there. A lot of buses, you know, my bus holds air for days. It wasn't that way when I got it. But if you're leaking like 5 PSI a minute, that's unacceptable. So if you shut your bus off and 5 minutes after you shut it off, you're all out of air, you can do the math on that. You're not even close to being what's legal. But remember again, you're exempt if it's an RV and nobody's checking on that stuff. And they should be. It should be very important. Air brakes are air brakes. It shouldn't matter if it's in an RV or not, or what my qualifications are. I should have this. Sorry, I got carried away again.
So maybe you shouldn't answer this one. What level of RV do you think needs a CDL license? Class A, B, C, travel trailer, or fifth wheel?
Okay, read that to me one more time because I don't know what all those things
What
are.
level
I don't
of
know what the,
RV
I don't,
do you think needs a CDL license? Class A, B, C?
I don't know what makes like class A is the big size, like a bus, and is that how it goes? I don't know RV stuff that much. Some of them are just a small, like a van. Like I don't think that's. But if it has air brakes, then I think you should have to require for an air brake test. If it's over a certain weight, you know, and I don't know if 26,000 pounds is the limit for some DOT stuff and not, but anything that's 20,000 pounds or more, or I don't know where you draw the line at. But you definitely, as a bus owner and an RV owner, you should be educating yourself. Even though the law does not require you to do these things, I expect you, or I want you to understand this stuff and do it as if it was the law for you. I guess that's maybe what I'm trying to say.
Does it seem the newer buses catch on fire more often than the vintage coaches?
Probably because there's a lot more computer wiring and crap, and a lot more flammable fiberglass, and uh, all kinds of super hot turbos, and everything nowadays is a little bit warmer. And I have space around my engine. Modern stuff is all packed in, and a lot of the RVs that have generators, that's where most of their fires come from, or sticking brakes and things like that too. So I don't know. Yes, I think modern stuff has a lot more fires.
I just happened to catch this one. If you join Patreon, do you get moved up the list to have work done on your coach?
Yes, you do, and there's certain benefits that Patreon members get that other people don't as well.
Unlike a super chat, do you get all the donation in Patreon?
Most of it, very small percentage, like 5% or something like that. I don't remember what it is. It's a small percent that goes to Patreon. And super chat, yeah,
They take out transaction fees for credit cards, and then it's a very small.
It's not huge. It's very reasonable. Unlike YouTube, that takes 40% of our advertising fees, or 45, whatever it is. It's almost, it's not quite 50-50 though. And then the super chats is 70-30, I think.
Yeah.
So 30% of a super chat goes directly back to YouTube too. So yeah, they definitely. I see why they invented that. They're raking in the dough, but we appreciate it anyways. So either way. I just think Patreon's cool because you get a lot better access to what we have going on. You know what's happening a little bit ahead of time on some things, and then more things that I wish I could share on the open YouTube channel, but I just can't because there's crazy people in this world. So it's more controlled environment and super friendly people on there too.
Looks like I've caught up. So if you have a question that I didn't answer that is safety related.
Yeah, she was only reading safety related questions. We wanted this to be about one topic only.
And I was trying to, I caught some that weren't capitalized just because I skimmed over it and saw it, but if you have anything, let me know.
Yeah, so hopefully I don't make too many people mad that have buses that are driving them around and have no clue what they should be doing. I try not to jump on my clients. I don't ever get angry with them, but I do make sure that I kind of teach them how to do it. I have them crawl under there with me. I have them adjusting the slack adjusters, and knowing what they're doing and why they're doing it that way and that kind of stuff. I try to do my part. I try to do it when I'm driving, and I try to help teach the other people that come here or that I go visit to do that too. So I understand that the loophole laws are there, and it makes me angry, and it goes into a lot of other things too, just besides that, but I don't know.
What gauges should be added to a bus if it does not have them already?
Oh, you definitely want oil pressure and temperature. My first bus didn't have any of that stuff. It had a couple of idiot lights that didn't work, and that was it. So yeah, oil pressure, obviously air pressure for the brakes, that's required by law. Although probably exempt in an RV if it has to be working or not. Sorry. But yeah, if you want to make sure that your electrical system's charging, so that kind of stuff. Be nice to have a fuel gauge, but I don't.
What is your approach to safely getting down a steep hill?
No, number one, whatever gear I went up that hill, I want to come down that hill in if it's on the highway. So if I'm down, climbing a mountain in second gear, when I go down that mountain on the other side, I'm in second gear, letting that transmission hold me back so I'm not going 85 miles an hour out of control down the hill. It's very important when you're driving in mountains to understand that it's not a race to go up, and it's definitely not a race to come down. And you just get in that right lane, you put your blinkers on, you let the transmission hold you back. That is the best thing that you can do, because then when you're going down a really steep grade and your bus hits like 70 miles an hour, it feels really uncomfortable, but the amount of braking that it requires to stop because of the downward, not just the 70 miles an hour in flat ground, that's one thing, but this is crazy. And that's how you catch your brakes on fire too, because if you had to stop, you can't. And you'll use a ton of brake, your brakes will be hot and smoking, and you don't realize how much that downward affects your, the mass and momentum and all that kind of stuff. So the transmission is the best thing that you can do. Obviously Jake brakes are great too, which I would like to have. Your manual transmission, you can manually shift it into the lower gear and keep it to hold that gear. I have videos of a 4106 that I drove through the mountains with an automatic transmission and manually shifted it up the hill, up the mountains, so that it would stay in the lower gear and down the mountain in the lower gear. So they do it too. If you just leave it in drive or whatever the automatic has, it's just going to shift up to the next gear when you hit 55. It's going to shift to the next gear when you hit 70 or whatever it is. You got to understand, driving your car going up and down that mountain, you never thought twice about it. Maybe you braked a little bit extra and thought, wow, I'm going pretty fast. But in a bus is so different.
Is that it on that?
Yeah, that's it on that.
Okay. Several people asked how your mom's doing, so I better ask
She's
her.
great. Mom's doing great. Fully recovered.
And then someone's wanting to know about a link to Patreon. You could probably put it in the comments after you're done.
Yeah, patreon.com/busgreasemonkey, but the B is capitalized in bus, and it's all one word, Bus Grease Monkey. That'll take you right to it.
Is there any advantage to having a tack with an automatic transmission?
Well, you would know what RPM you're at, so if you end up lugging it or something, then yeah, you would know that. That would be helpful to have. Not required. You should be able to hear the noise back there and kind of know about what you're doing, but.
What you recommend looking at a bus, manual or automatic transmission?
Well, I can tell you that driving a automatic transmission bus around town is a dream. Driving this thing around town or in the city is not a dream. But on the open highway, it's fun, and I like the manual transmission. Less people can drive your bus, so maybe your wife doesn't want to learn how to drive a double clutch, non-synchronized transmission, that kind of thing. If my bus was an automatic, she would probably drive it more, or period.
If you had power steering.
Maybe. Power steering will be nice. We are going to add power steering to the bus.
But I still don't want to drive.
Yes.
Is it true that rear brakes apply first, then the front brakes engage?
Depending on what treadle valve you have. I don't know if all the treadle valves do that, but the modern ones do. When you first apply the treadle, air goes to the back first, and then after it goes down a certain amount, then it sends air to the front brakes. That's so you don't lock up your front brakes immediately when you're braking.
Can you put automatic adjustable slack adjusters on?
You can. I don't know if the S-cam mounts are exactly the same for this vintage stuff or not. I assume that they probably are, but I don't know.
And I believe we're all caught up. So
Okay.
It's probably a good time to wrap
All right.
up.
Yeah, it's a good time. No more questions. We'll stop that. So don't ask any more. I appreciate you guys watching. Hope I didn't rant too much, but I thought I would just discuss what is going on with that and why people are always asking, how is that legal? While it's not technically legal, it's not illegal either. And you'll see a lot of crazy stuff like that. And it all comes down to, like I started out the video talking about, the RV manufacturers get together and go to their politicians and say, we employ this many people. We're not going to sell as many RVs if you require us to meet these guidelines, or you require people that buy it to do this. They're not going to buy them. So then our people aren't going to make as much money. And then that politician makes a law or starts pushing a law that'll go up, or a bill that'll go up for that. And then the retirement community gets together. Hey, our retired people want to buy RVs, but they don't want to have to pass a physical every year, or they don't want to have to, do this. They don't want to have to get a special license. They just want to be able to get it and drive it and spend all their money, and they pay taxes. So you got to make, so then this bill gets pushed through. Hey, we're going to support your reelection campaign. And that's politics, right? I did it again. Okay, we're done. Is that it?
Yes.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good night.